Hello everyone, Happy New Year. Welcome back to 2023 League of Legends action. This is going to be a little bit of a weird one. I haven't recorded anything in quite a while. Just got burnt out from doing so much all last year. I'm very happy to be where I am, especially with the channel. I averaged like a little bit over 100 views a video last year, and that was way beyond more than I imagined, just considering how niche this stuff is. And I don't put a lot of effort into my content because, I still got other stuff to do, working on betting full time, DFS. Um, I guess that's only two things, but, living life outside of that as well. So, things got busy and, videos were unfortunately, one of the first things to get cut. But nonetheless going to be try to be a little bit more consistent and all that stuff. I actually didn't miss too many videos last year. Was pretty good with it outside of being sick and stuff. It is what it is. But looking forward to rebooting up here in 2023, getting started with everything. So this is going to be a little bit of an off-season review, looking at some of the rosters, how things have changed. A lot of stuff going on. I think we're going to be doing LPL and LCK this video, but if the video gets a little bit long, I'll split them up into two separate videos. But we're going to go ahead and just get started. We're mainly going to be talking about the moves, what's going to happen, and then we're going to try to make a little bit of an advanced tier list here. Of course, I'm probably going to end up waiting until probably the day before the season starts before making anything for official predictions, just because there's still a few question marks in the rosters, and we obviously know one spot can make a big difference. So we're kind of just going to be going team by team here and making a little bit of a review of their off season and what's going to be looking at. So obviously we're just going to go alphabetically, but we could also start with the league winners here in Anyone's Legend. They ended up changing nothing pretty much. Their roster is still ZDZ, Xiaohao, Forge, Betty. They ended up getting Sword Art here over Chocho in the support role. I do think this is actually a pretty strict upgrade. Obviously, Sword Art was not playing well last year, but we know he has the synergy. I believe Sword Art played with Betty, right? Or am I making that up? I feel like they played together and were pretty decent. Weibo, no. Okay, yeah, I'm just making that up. They never play together, but nonetheless, I actually still value Sword Art as a pretty solid support. Obviously, he ended up spending that time in NA, which is kind of you have to write off a little bit, in my opinion. And then he came back and just couldn't quite acclimate back to life. So that's tough for Sword Art, but overall, I still think he's actually a pretty solid support, especially in the LPL. Get reacclimated with everyone and everything, and all that stuff. So I'm pretty excited for it. Where do we rank this roster? The only changes they made from last year, which obviously went pretty poorly. If we look at their results, this is tournament results. I thought that would show their placements last year. Oh yeah, here we are. LPL 2022 spring, LPL 22 summer. They finished 13th and then 11th, and they only changed to the support role. I feel like optimistically, even as a optimistic AL fan, I think they're still going to be about where they were. I do think they are going to improve a little bit. We did see some great things coming from these some of these players last year, especially ZDZ and Xiaohao. We know that they're pretty young, at least relative to the league. We could see ZDZ 2001 birth, Xiaohao 2002 birth, Forge 2000 birth. Just crazy to think about out loud, but ZDZ 21, Xiaohao 20, Forge 22. I think Betty and Sword Art, Sword Art's a little bit older. He's like 27, 26 or something, and he's still young as well, but obviously an insane established talent. So pretty decent stuff from them. No changes really other than support role. I think they're going to get slightly better, but I think best case optimistic things come together for them a little bit, but I think highest you could realistically have them, I think it's bottom of B, but I'm going to conservatively put them just at the top of C for now. Next one up is BLG. This is actually a pretty exciting roster coming into next year. They have Bin, Can, Shun, or most likely Shun, Yagao, Elk, and On. So they've made up a kind of conglomerate of leftover players from last year. But nonetheless, I think this is actually a pretty solid looking roster. I'm pretty excited for Shun to have solid players around him. We saw him actually be like a pretty solid, I want to say like a top 5, top 7 at the worst jungler in the LPL last year, but his team was just continuously trash, no other way to put it. Obviously don't think too highly of Yagao or Elk. I don't think they're as insane maybe as kind of their name. People recognize their names pretty heavily, but I don't think they're that great. But nonetheless, they're actually solid players, and I think that's kind of all Shun needs is just some solid stuff around him, and he can make things happen. So I'm actually pretty excited for this roster. I have them probably in that kind of same AL range, but I could see a lot of things happening here, and I think they're going to be much better than what they were last year. I know they had some ups and downs, but they finished 8th and 10th. Those are not terrible results, going 9 and 7 and 7 and 9. But nonetheless, I think this is about. I think they're going to be a solid middling team. I'm going to move them up to B. I think they're going to be a pretty solid middling team competing for a playoff spot. Maybe getting one, maybe not. But I think they're actually pretty solid. They're probably, I don't know. I feel like that's the same description I have for AL, but I think BLG could actually maybe be a little bit higher. Maybe on the top end of B, where I think AL would probably be on the bottom end of B at best. But yeah, I'm actually pretty excited for this roster. I'm excited to see what Shun can do with solid enough pieces around him. So EDG, this is going to be a sad story roster. They obviously got gutted and lost pretty much most of their stars. We saw Scout leave. We saw... trying to find it, but we know Viper left. I don't know why I'm not seeing that. Oh yeah, Viper leaves. So Scout and Viper, they're gone. That's obviously just big downgrade. Pretty sad stuff from EDG. Their replacements are bringing in. They have Fofo, and then they brought in Leave. Leave, I believe, is just coming up from their academy team. Yeah. So not inspiring stuff. They still keep Ale, JJ, and Mako, but they have to build around Fofo and Leave. I think going from Scout to Fofo isn't a dramatic drop-off. I think Fofo's a pretty solid mid laner. Obviously not on Scout's level, and obviously I think going from Viper to Leave is going, I think, from one of the best, maybe if not the best AD carry in Viper to an LDL player. It's just big downgrade kind of across the board for this team. I do not have high hopes for them. Maybe some people are going to bat their eyes a little bit at this, but I'm going to put them below even the kind of the C tier. I think Ale, JJ, and I don't want to throw Mako into this tier because I think Mako is still a very solid player. But I think Ale and JJ kind of got away with a lot because they had such elite talent in the mid and AD carry position. So I think they're going to be hard pressed to find consistency, and it's just not a spot I like a lot, really. FPX, pretty interesting stuff. They obviously just signed Hacker. They announced that very recently, see 4 days ago or so. Their team is pretty interesting. They have Fearness in the top lane, former LGD, Hacker, and then they still kept Care. Looking like they're going to be going with LWX and Lele in the support role. I think Lele is a name change, right? No, doesn't look like it. Yeah, it looks like he's just coming up from the academy system for them. So I don't know. Obviously, I'm not a big fan of Hacker. Fearness coming up from LGD. I do somewhat like Fearness as a top laner, but he's like middling to lower middling as a player. Care showed some flashes last year. LWX, and then bring up another player from the bottom lane. Of course, let's see what they did last year. They ended, I think, pretty poorly in both splits, right? They 8 and 8, 7 and 9, so good for a 9th and 10th spot. I think things are only going to get worse. I don't rate this roster very highly. I know people may want to hype them up a little bit. Fearness showed some things from LGD. Care some things, LWX some things, Hacker, they've all shown some flashes, but I just don't see where the consistency is going to come from. So they're going to be the first team I throw into D tier. I don't know where people are going to rank this team, so maybe this is a hot take. I'm not sure. Maybe other people are going to have them that low as well. I'm not sure, but I just don't see it. I just don't love the consistency there, and I just struggle with them. I think they're going to be a pretty interesting underdog in some spots, similar to kind of how I viewed LGD last year. But that's, I think, the upside there. Heading over to IG, this roster got kind of gutted as well. They lost Shun. They moved Wink back to support. I believe he was support, then moved him to AD carry, then moved back to support. So we could see support, AD carry. Let's open this up. Okay, that's not what I was looking at. But I think he was a support, or no, he was a AD carry. I don't know. I'm just kind of talking in circles. But they moved Wink to support, I believe. They're going to pair him up with On. They're going to have Dove mid lane, I believe, with Gideon, and then probably Nenny top. This is actually a pretty interesting roster. I do think Dove specifically was pretty solid, obviously, with, I think, Live Sandbox, correct? I don't want to look silly here, but yeah, it was Live Sandbox Dove. I believe he was their top laner, correct? He role swapped up there. Yeah, so Dove was a former mid laner. He moved up to top lane for this LSB team. He was actually a pretty solid top laner, but he is going back to his native position in the mid lane for IG. They're still keeping Nenny. Obviously, the loss of Shun matters a lot. They're bringing in Gideon as well. I believe from, KT Roaster. He was kind of subbed in a little bit here and there. I don't think he was used primarily too often, but still a solid enough player. This is a pretty hard team to rank, in my opinion, because I think when you kind of look at the players, I can actually see some things working here. Obviously, the role swapping across the board is pretty nervous from me. Wink moving roles all the time. Maybe he'll actually be able to have a solidified role for once. But him moving back down to support, Dove moving back down to mid lane, I'm not sure. It doesn't inspire a lot of confidence, but nonetheless, I think this is actually a relatively solid-ish team. Not having them too high. I'm going to put them IG, I think, above EDG for now. I think this is a pretty solid spot. I think these players have enough consistency to make things somewhat interesting, but I'm just not loving the names here. I really just am not. In terms of their upside, I don't see the unexplored aspect of this roster. I think we kind of know what we're going to get from these players, and that's why I don't believe in that upside that much here. But I think there's still going to be not a free win. That's kind of, I guess, the antithesis there. JD Gaming, our first all-star studded roster of the LPL. So they obviously kept 369, Kanavi, and missing. They replaced Yagao and Hope. They bring in Knight and Ruler. What a combination of names for this roster that they got knocked out in the semifinals, right? Of Worlds. Yeah, semifinals of Worlds. They lost to T1. They, of course, lose Hope and Yagao, kind of combine their names there. They bring in Knight and Ruler, two arguably top three, guaranteed top five, I think, in their positions. To add along 369 and Kanavi, 369, who was the best top laner last year, I think, especially towards the end of it when it really mattered. And Kanavi, of course, is an insanely talented jungler. Missing, I think, it's kind of hard to tell because I feel like he's kind of, from my memory, I think he's only played with like star-studded rosters. I guess I don't remember what his time on like WE was. Yeah, it looks like Breathe, Beishong, Shanks, Elk lineup. I know it doesn't look like quite the all-star team, but they were actually pretty solid. Like we can look at they got third in these regional finals. They got third in playoffs. Like that's really good. Third in the LPL in the playoffs. That's pretty solid. Like maybe it's just he's good. Maybe I'm just being a little bit of a hater. I actually like Missing as a player, so I'm just trying to be honest. We've not seen him outside of, I think, these very solid rosters, so it's hard to gauge how good he really is. But nevertheless, when he is probably your worst player, that is setting you up for success. I'd be very hard pressed to have them anywhere probably other than first right now. When you look at the names on this roster, it's very hard to see where the problems are. I think you could definitely argue that you have a top 5 player in 4 out of the 5 roles outside of support, but even then you're probably still having top 10, top 15 at worst, I think, support player. So it's just an all-star roster. It's just really insane. I'm excited for this team. I think many people are, but yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting. LGD, team that makes me lose money more, I think, any team any year than this team. Chalitza up top, I believe. It's going to be Meteor. I believe it's going to be Hai Chao. Then LPC, Jinjiao. This is a team I want to believe in, especially Meteor. If you guys are veterans of the LPL and DFS and betting, all this stuff, you guys are going to know Meteor from his BLG days. Of course, famous because he spelled Meteor incorrectly. Misspelled his name when submitting it, and then he was Meteor. But so that's pretty funny, but changed it back. He's just an exciting player. He's an aggressive Shun style player where I think he's just going to do things. He's going to be aggressive, make things happen. I think this is pretty interesting for a team of this caliber. Obviously, these names are not too inspiring when you have like Chalitza, Meteor, Hai Chao, LPC, Jinjiao. Like, these are young LDL players. So there's just not a lot of solidified veteran like leadership here, but I think this is a pretty interesting young malleable team that can do things. Like, obviously when we look at LPC, I think LPC is interesting. He was on JDG. He's been up and down in the JDG system. Now he's actually getting a shot here. It's going to be interesting. I think this is a team that actually has some upside. They're going to be pretty interesting. I'm going to put them under IG above EDG for now. The more I'm doing this, the more I kind of want to move EDG down to the bottom tier, but that almost seems a little bit disrespectful, but I don't know. We'll do this for now. I think this team actually has upside. I saw some glimpses, especially from Hai Chao last year, that made me pretty excited. I think they have enough kind of young potential that if they get some time, they do things together, I think this team could actually like kind of come together and do something. Their upside, I think, is obviously not quite as high as when you look at like a star-studded JDG roster and compare them. But I think they can do things. I think they're going to be above the bottom tier, which I think is where they were last year. I think did they finish the bottom of the league? They finished 16th, which is 1 off the bottom, and then 14th, which is like 4 spots off the bottom. So they've been bottom feeders. I think they're probably a little bit better than that, but they're going to be interesting, especially for like DFS and stuff. They're a team that I'm definitely interested in. Meteor, obviously, as we know, Hai Chao. It's going to be pretty interesting, but I'm pretty excited for this team, actually. Sorry, my throat is still kind of recovering. I don't know. I feel like I'm always sick when I start doing videos and stuff, but nonetheless, we move on. LNG. Feel bad for this team. I feel like a little bit. They still are missing an AD carry. I believe they don't have one on the roster. It's still Panda, Tarzan, Scout, and then Hung. They do not have an AD carry yet. So this is what I'm talking about when there's still a little bit of question marks to be had. The AD carry, I don't expect them to get anyone great because obviously it's getting pretty late into the off season, so it's not like there's a lot of options. But assuming they get a relatively okay player, someone who can just kind of hold their own at least. I'm trying to think of a comparable name. Like if they got I guess Abel's not a good example. If they got a Hope level player, maybe LWX, Elk, Betty, these types of players who can, they're not quite all-stars, but they can hold their own. Assuming they get somebody of that kind of caliber, maybe a little bit worse. That's how I'm going to assume this team continues. So they have Panda, Tarzan, Scout, and Hung. Panda C was obviously pretty terrible last year, but of course he got thrown into the blender, I think. So I kind of want to maybe give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt with his performance last year. He was terrible, like arguably worst player in the league by like a good margin, bad. But nevertheless, we move on. Tarzan, Scout, and then don't know what to make of a Hung and don't know bottom lane. It's weird. Tarzan and Scout, seeing these names with these other names, it just seems so out of place. You have to assume it's just kind of going to be a somewhat repeatable story to last year, where we saw Tarzan and Doinby just not be able to do anything. I do think Scout is a slightly better player than Doinby, especially with his flexibility. I think Doinby's a little bit figured out right now. I still think he's a very solid player, but not quite on the level of Scout. So I'm not sure. I think this is going to be a relatively solid team just because of Tarzan and Scout, but I think the AD carry position is going to matter a lot here. I'm going to put them probably at the bottom end of B tier just because of Tarzan and Scout. I don't think it's hard to see them being like bad, that bad. I think when we look at where they were last year, they finished 4th and 7th, so not terrible, but remember Light and Lumao, or Light and Iwandi. Light was actually a very solid AD carry last year, so I feel like it's tough to see where this team goes. I feel like it's only going to get worse, and it's going to be a little bit sad to see Tarzan and Scout down there, but, it is what it is. We move on to OMG. Kind of kept things the same. I respect it. They are going back with Shanji, Aki, Cream, Abel, and Jerry. They're not going to have Cold anymore, or I guess he moved to Analyst. Jerry moves to starting roster. Shanji, Aki, Cream, Abel remain on the team. Cold leaves. So Cold's gone. It's going to be Shanji, Aki, Cream, Abel, and Jerry. I don't know if we saw enough from Jerry to quite make an opinion on him yet, but I'm a little bit hesitant. I have him on like the little bit lower end, maybe in that like 10 to 15 area of supports, until he kind of shows us a little bit different. But of course we know what we're going to be getting with Shanji is crazy picks, Aki, Cream, and Abel. This team was actually pretty interesting to see last year. I'm going to see how they corral these players in this year. That's going to be the big difference. Obviously, their new terrible logo, I absolutely despise it. I think it looks insanely bad. I just don't know what to make of that. But they just don't have much change, and I don't know. I think it's just going to be their range of outcomes as a team is just so wide. It's really hard to guess where they're going to end up. I could definitely see them being like a top 5 team. I could see them being a bottom 5 team. I really could, just because of the outlandish strategies and stuff that they have that make them so unique. Their variety of outcomes is just so wide. So for that reason, I'm going to put them in that kind of median tier. I think they're going to be about where they were last year. I don't think they made improvements or anything, but they do have another year together. Of course, we know Cream and Shanji very young. At least in the LPL scene, they can continue to learn and improve. We could see some big improvement. I could definitely see OMG being like an A tier team, but until they show that, I just can't have them up that high. I'm gonna need to get through these a little bit quicker. My voice is giving out much quicker than I anticipated, but nevertheless, RA, interesting lineup. Cube, Leon, Strive, Asim, and Southwind. So we know Asim from LGD last year, he was actually a pretty solid player. He was actually pretty impressive for the short amount of time he was there. Obviously, we know my personal problems with RA last year were widely reliant on Leon and iBoy. iBoy is gone, Leon stays there. We get the same stuff with Cube, Strive. They now have Southwind. this team is not too inspiring. I really am surprised they kept going with Leon. I actually do rate Cube as like a relatively solid mid laner, like in the 7 to 10 range when it comes to top laners in the LPL. So it's gonna be interesting. I like Cube. I like Assam. Strive is okay. Southwind can kind of hold his own, but he's been showing pretty weak play, especially lately. Last year specifically. So I don't know. This team just seems uninspired. It really does. I think Cube and Assam are okay for what they are and what they do, but I don't know. I could definitely see some low lows coming from this team. But again, I think their range of outcomes could be kind of wide. Like if they were kind of a B tier team, I wouldn't be that shocked either. But for where I anticipate in the moves I think they made, I think I'm just going to throw them in that bottom tier. I really just am not inspired by really anyone on this team outside of Cube and Assam. And even then, it's not like they're incredible talents like how you have Tarzan and Scout on LNG. Moving on to RNG. Pretty interesting stuff here. So they've, I think, so they lost Xiaohu, right? Yeah, so they lost Xiaohu. They've yet to have a replacement mid laner, but their team elsewhere stays the same. It's still Breathe, Wei, Gala, and Ming, and they do not have a replacement mid laner yet. It's really hard to gather where this team is going to be without their mid laner, because we obviously, when you think of RNG, you think of Xiaohu. Now Xiaohu is gone. What is the identity of this team going to look like? You're probably going to be playing heavily through Gala. Is Gala good enough? Yes, I think he absolutely is good enough to carry this team. I believe, in my opinion, he's a top 5 player or top 5 AD carry. I feel like I've said that about 7 AD carries so far this video, but I don't know. I love Gala. I think Gala and Ming can do enough. I'm not high on Wei or Breathe, but I think they can do enough. I'm not sure where people are going to rank this team. Their mid laner is going to dictate that a lot, but I'm going to have them as a conservative, they're going to be at the bottom of A tier. I just think Gala and Ming can do enough. I'm not giving up on this team yet because they lost Xiaohu. Obviously, Xiaohu is an incredible mid laner, the face of RNG for so many years. But I think they could do. I think the rest of these players are good enough. Especially Gala and Ming. I think they're going to shift their focus to play through these players. I think that could kind of make up for what they're losing with Xiaohu. Really putting your focus into one playstyle and refining it, I think, can help out a lot. And I think that's hopefully the direction they're going to be going. Team WE. Still not much change here. They bring in Hope. They bring in Heng. Just a support or just a jungle coming up from Young Miracles, which I believe is Team WE's academy team, correct? I don't know. I think I don't remember. I don't know if they are. I think they're. I don't think they're related, but whatever. So they bring in Heng from Young Miracles, who's actually a kind of well-known team for actually producing talent pretty well. They're keeping Shanks, which is unimpressive. Their top laners are going to be between Bubu and Demon. Still, I think they're both still kind of pretty bad options, but I don't think they're quite like Panda C levels of bad. So I think that's like okay. And they have Hope in the Iwandi as a bottom lane. Obviously, I liked Hope a good bit last year with JDG, but when you have 369 and Kanavi doing stuff everywhere else on the map, it's very easy to be an AD carry, and I don't think he's going to have that same allowance here. I think this is a slight upgrade for this team. I think that ended last in both splits last year. Let's see, 17th, and then they ended 15th. That course ended 0-16 last year. And they're keeping their top laner. They're keeping their mid laner. They got a new bot lane and a new jungler. I don't know. I don't love the upside of this team. It's hard to find really what's going to be impressive here. And unfortunately, it's going to be sad to see Hope go from, I think, which is like a semi-final world spot, to I think is probably going to be like a bottom somewhere LPL team. It's going to be a little bit tragic, but I just don't see it here. I don't see how Hope is going to be able to do the things he was doing. Getting to the final stretch here, final 5 teams, top esports. We could see a pretty weird construction of teams so far. I've not been too inspired by a lot of these teams, so pretty bottom heavy league, which is going to be weird. There's going to be some spots open up top. When we looked at some of the rosters from last year, they were insanely stacked. We're not seeing quite the same levels here, but we move on. So top esports, it's the same roster except they are losing Knight and they are bringing in Rookie. Rookie, of course, is still a solid player, of course, a world champion in his own right. He is reuniting with Jackie Love from their world champion victory on IG. Rookie and Jackie Love with the Shy, I believe Ning and Mako was that team. No, not Mako. Who's the IG support? That won Worlds. Rookie, the Shy. I don't know. I don't even know why I'm looking at this. This is a complete waste of time. I'm just trying to remember who that IG support was that they won Worlds with. It was Jackie Love and Ming? No, not Ming. Mako? IG Mako? That doesn't sound right. I don't know. I don't think he's left EDG. After that complete waste of a minute, Wayward, Tion, Rookie, Jackie Love, and Mark. I think this team gets about the same, if not, I'm just going to say about the same. I think the direct impact of going from Knight to Rookie, I do think is a direct downgrade, but I think maybe getting some of the familiarity between Rookie and Jackie Love can help Jackie Love get a little bit better. Obviously, you guys know my stance on Jackie Love. I think he's extremely overrated, especially by the Western media who doesn't watch the games as often. They see the name, they recognize him from winning Worlds, they assume he's good. He's just not that good, but I think he may be able to get a little bit of a resurgence here, maybe with Rookie back. Obviously, we saw some great things from Wayward and Tion. I don't love Mark still. I don't think he's been too impressive, but I think this team stays about the same. And maybe as much as it kind of pains me to have them, I think they're going to be up there, competing. And I think they still have a solid enough team everywhere to make sense, especially with Tion. I love Tion. Him working with Rookie and Wayward is going to be pretty interesting. I think this is still a solid enough team to be interested in. Then we have TT. Their roster right now is Hoya, Beishuan, Yukal, Huanfeng, and Xinliu. They were pretty much the same. It's still Hoya, Beishuan, Yukal. Their bottom lane changed from Kepler and Yao Yao what was it? Yeah, Puff, Kepler, Southwind, Yao Yao. So I don't know, kind of a mishmash of stuff happening here with this roster, but I don't think they improved too much. I think this team was still interesting last year, especially when we look at the Korean players of Hoya and Yukal. I still think they showed some stuff last year. I think they didn't really get much time playing kind of as a full team until the end of the year. Like we saw, I think, some roster swapping and stuff earlier on. They finally came together and started getting fully entrenched as a team. Like we see Xiaosheng getting a series here, that kind of thing. We could see them coming together in Demacia Cup and doing well. Of course, these teams are not too impressive, but nonetheless, I think the fact that they're finally, I think, a team. I really don't love these big rosters. I feel like they're supposed to breed competition, but I like the cohesion. I value cohesion, I think, over most when it comes down to this game where these small micro decisions and everything happens so quickly. You have to be on the same page without being able to talk. You have to just know what the other person is going to do. I love the cohesion. I think this team is going to have cohesion, and I think we saw some glimpses for them last year. Am I going to put them high up? No. I'm probably going to have them in this C tier. I think they're going to be above these, I think, bad teams in this D tier, but the upside I don't think is quite there. But it's going to be an interesting team. They're an interesting team for sure. They're on my list, I think, of teams that I'm kind of rooting for and I could see working out. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But Ultra Prime, interesting team here. They're going with ZS probably in the top lane, Ning, King, or is it? I don't want to say this incorrectly. Pronounce. Oh. I believe the Q is pronounced like a Ching. So I don't know. I want to say Ching. Maybe it's King. I don't know. But they're going with Ning. I believe Ching, and because it's Chocho, so I believe this would be Ching. So we'll go with that. Doggo and Baolan. A relatively interesting and somewhat intriguing roster. I don't think Ning is all that interesting. Obviously, he was the world-winning jungle with IG, so he does have that pedigree. But of course, we've seen him not perform well. He's obviously taken a couple years off from playing. His last professional match was in 2020. That he's obviously coming back with, I don't think an all-star roster by any means. ZS in the top lane. I believe Ching in mid lane, playing in FPX academies. He's been TES academy. He's not a mid laner I've heard talked up as much. So I don't think he's going to be that great of a player, but it's still obviously a good bit of unknown there. We have Doggo and Baolan. Obviously, Baolan. That is the IG support. It was Jackie Love Baolan. So they are bringing in that jungle support stuff here. So yeah, 2018 wins Worlds with IG. That's who it was. So they're bringing in Ning and Baolan back together. They're adding in Doggo, Ching, and ZS. I don't know. I don't love the makeup of this roster. I really don't. Obviously, it's been a couple of years since I believe now Ning and Baolan played. I think they both retired at the end of that. Or maybe Baolan played another year. Yeah, he played another year. Didn't get any games in last year. So he's been a year off. Ning has been 2 years off. They have a LDL mid laner. They have this top laner of ZS who has been thrown around from really bad team to really bad team. I believe this that was 8-day sub. Like E-Star pretty bad, Ultra Prime pretty bad. I guess this is still his same team, but he just has been on bad team after bad team. I don't love the makeup of this roster, but again, it's pretty interesting, especially with Doggo. They're going to be I think like a fan favorite because they have Ning and Baolan, and of course Doggo. But I don't know. I think you could definitely argue that they could legitimately be one of the worst teams in the league. I would not be shocked to see this team finish kind of maybe how a little bit WE did last year, maybe at that 0-16 area. I almost kind of want to just put them at the bottom, but that FPX roster, I don't know. I'm gonna put Ultra Prime at the bottom. I really do see things going pretty poorly for this team. V5. Still missing everyone. You cannot put, I think, anyone here. We thought it was going to be Dream, but we're not sure. They're missing jungle and top laner. We think it's going to be Invincible and Dream, so it's going to be Invincible, Xiaolong Bao, Photic, and Show with Dream. I don't know. For now, it's going to be like a tentative ranking. I'm not sure. I'll put them at the bottom of C. Just because I think Xiaolong Bao and Photic and Dream proved that they were good enough last year. Like, obviously, they're going to be missing Karsa, Rookie, PB God. I didn't rate Rich that highly, but I don't know. They're losing everyone. It's just a sad sight. But I still think they have enough between the players, the couple players that stayed and their replacements. They're not going to be walkovers. And then, of course, we come to the second hyped star-studded team. They have Weibo Gaming here with the Shy, Karsa, Xiaohu, Light, and Crisp. This is going to be my second S tier team. Of course, you guys know I'm not too high on the Shy as usual, but still Karsa, an insane jungler, pretty good. Xiaohu, Light, and Crisp. They're just very solid everywhere. They have the upside with sometimes the Shy does end up popping off. Karsa has that as well. Xiaohu and Light have that as well. I think there's definitely a case to be made where you could just put Weibo as the third A tier team. I think this could actually be like a little bit more fair because I'm still not in love with this bottom lane. I think Light and Crisp are serviceable, but I don't know. When you're asking them to be the second best team in the league by like a margin, I'm not sure. So for now, this is going to how I'm going to have my tier list. Of course, we still have some question marks with some players and stuff, but I mean, just look at the names. You really don't have to think too much further. I think their top side of the map is pretty strong. As much as I do shit on the Shy, I do think this is solid enough, and especially when he has pieces around him. I'm just gonna have to wait and see with this bottom lane. I don't believe in Light and Crisp to be consistent enough for them to be like a solidified S tier team, like how I think JDG have Ruler and Missing. When you compare those two bottom lanes, I feel like it's not very close. So for that reason, I'm going to have my tier list kind of out as this. I don't know. I think this is looking like a relatively bottom heavy team. Obviously, some teams are going to come through and surprise us. Obviously, when we look at some teams that I think have that potential, some teams that I'm going to be, I think, buying into a little bit. Obviously, AL, as a delusional AL stan, it is what it is. I'm going to believe in AL more than everyone else when I shouldn't. BLG, I think this roster looks pretty interesting. I could definitely see them kind of sticking up into the kind of top 4 area as well. Maybe IG, but that's a pretty long shot one. Again, maybe OMG, now that all these kind of strong god tier teams are kind of breaking up and falling apart. I could see them moving up as well. But I think that's kind of it. I think between those few teams, OMG, AL, BLG, maybe IG, those teams seem pretty interesting to me in terms of the upside that they have. Maybe LGD can put some stuff together, but again, I'm not anticipating them to be a top 4 contender by any means. I think they can be better, but you're kind of asking a lot. So this is going to be a pretty heavy wait and see season. I don't think there's a lot of predictability here. There's a lot of question marks across the board, not even with just rosters, but when these rosters get put together, it's going to be interesting. So nonetheless, I think I'm going to call it there before I end up, coughing a lung out. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you made it this far, just me rambling. I know we're trying to get back into the swing of things with this stuff coming up. This is a bad time to resume because I actually do have a pretty small but nose surgery coming up on January 4th. Just getting my airway corrected a little bit. So I'll be out of commission for a good bit after that, probably like a week or so, but hopefully be back in time for LPL to start back up. I'll try to make some videos on the season-long best ball draft that we got coming up with Emmerich and some of the guys over on the esports department and the Shark Cove. Those will be pretty interesting, so keep an eye out for all that stuff. Thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it, and I will see you guys when I see you guys. I'm not sure what's coming up next, but hopefully get back in the swing of things. Thank you guys.